they don't really care if it's Bitcoin or Stellar or Lightning or Arc. They just don't care. They just want a solution. Some of those solutions can put them at risk.
How are you doing today anyway? You feeling better?
I'm feeling better. I think it's the first time I've been that unwell for a few years. And I think it was just my body saying that we're going from a previous phase into a new phase, and you needed to rest and think and be ready for the next. And yeah, I'm out of it now. I'm ready.
What a lovely stoic approach to illness. I'm just getting ready for the new phase of nonsense.
It's part of life. It's part of life. You can learn from everything.
Okay, and so your singing voice hasn't been affected?
What, you want me to sing right now? I think my singing voice hasn't been affected. I just sang a few moments ago, so I think it's okay.
You did? It's just
it's no worse than it was before, put it that way.
Okay, fantastic.
But it's no better than it was before either.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
Well, either way, thank you so much for coming here. And I know that you've been feeling ill lately. You've been cocooning for the next phase, so I'm really glad to spend some time with you this morning.
Yeah, just stress of knowing I was going to have this meeting with you. That's what.
Is it really that?
Yeah, it was just the anticipation. And
I'm a pretty intimidating character. Yeah. The purpose or the idea behind this podcast is to give an insight into some of the stories that I'm working on, and also because, and this is something I'm realizing more and more, I do really enjoy talking about Bitcoin, and this gives me an access to do that. And but for today, I really wanted to focus on sort of you and Fedi, of course, or Fedi, to riff on the Jedi stuff earlier, and then in terms of sort of scaling Bitcoin and what that looks like now. A little bit on Bitcoin in Portugal, if possible. You might just have moved here just because it's nice weather. I don't know. We'll find out soon. And then, but yeah, Fedi in the West. I've had some weird ideas about Fedi in the West. But first thing, I imagine that most people who know who I am know who you are already. But just in case, let me start off this way. What would you been doing if you weren't working on Bitcoin? Because then people give you a sense of who you are and what you're working on.
Oh.
Sorry, is that a bit too heavy to start off with?
There's what I said I would be doing if I wasn't working on Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
To my friends, which was, before Fedi, I ran a Bitcoin exchange, and
CoinFloor,
in the UK, and outside we were in Europe and worldwide, for nearly a decade. And after selling that, I decided that I was going to just take a break and, do the post-sale of company thing where you'd travel and go to some nice beach somewhere and
nice,
let my hair down, obviously, and all that sort of stuff. And that was my plan. I was going to do that for 3 or 4 years, just without even having an end date. So technically I should be doing it now. However, I found Fedimint, one of the key technologies behind Fedi, and within 6 months I was back on the bike, the entrepreneurial bike. And prior to Fedi, and prior to CoinFloor, I was a serial entrepreneur for several years. So the last 15 years of my life has been being an entrepreneur. Prior to that, I was a very senior technologist. So I went from studying computer science and cognitive science and doing AI in university to building massively multiplayer virtual games used by millions of users. Went on to be CTO of a number of very successful companies. So I had 2 lives: the life of being a CTO and a technologist, and then the life of being an entrepreneur. However, if you ask any of my friends, my plan of going and having a break, when I started up at Fedi, they said that when you told us that, we didn't say anything, but we knew for a fact that there's no way you're going to be able to take. They were surprised I was even to take 6 months off before starting again. So
wow,
I'm a card-carrying entrepreneur. I'm going to do that till I die.
Nice, man. That's amazing. I thought you could have started your voiceover career.
That could be a business, but it would always have some entrepreneurial element to it.
Okay,
that's the main thing. I don't think I can imagine working for someone else anymore.
Well, that's one of the big things of Bitcoin, right? Isn't it? Make yourself unemployable.
Yeah, I mean, although I do work for people, whenever you're starting a business, you're in service to the users that you're trying to support. And then, so in our case, I feel like I'm in service to the team, to investors, and I feel like I'm in service to disempowered communities around the world, whether they're unbanked in the global south or the global majority, as Alex Glasty likes to call it now.
Oh, I quite like that.
Experimenting with that term.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are people living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes. People, by circumstances out of their control, have been made fragile, and we use freedom technologies like Bitcoin to make them anti-fragile.
And that's certainly the majority now, those people living in authoritarian regimes as opposed to democratic, free regimes. Okay, so for those that aren't familiar with Fedi, I don't want this podcast to be explaining how Fedi works, what a Fedimint is, that kind of stuff. But is there any way you could sort of frame...
I'd like to know that as well, actually. So it's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Is there any way we can sort of give the 1 minute, elevator pitch for Fedi, and also explain, it doesn't have to be 1 minute, of course, and then explain what a Fedimint is before we can then ask like where we're at now, or is it too complicated?
Well, I'll give the why,
yes,
the what, and then if you want, we could talk about Fedimint.
Nice. Okay.
So the why, so Fedi, the reason we exist is to empower communities everywhere. And we do this using what we call freedom technologies. And these are technologies that are open source, often decentralized, but censorship resistant and privacy preserving. Bitcoin is one of them. Lightning is another. Fedimint, which was the missing piece for us, is another. What we use this for is, on the ground, is to do two things. We create a community super app, the Fedi app, which is, super app is chat, money, and more. But instead of being run by some centralized party where your privacy and your liberty could be at risk, we use Bitcoin, we use Fedimint, Lightning, and other freedom technologies to empower communities to take control over their money, their data, their communication, so that they can ensure the privacy and liberty of their citizens, their users. And that's the big difference between us and a WeChat or a Telegram and so on and so forth. And to our constant research, no one else is trying to do that. One of the key technologies we use is Fedimint. And Fedimint provides the missing piece, which is community custody. So instead of putting your custody in the hands of a Coinbase or trying to do it all yourself, we have this middle ground of second-party custody or community custody. And Fedimint is a technology that allows communities to be able to find the most trusted elements of their community. We call them guardians. And they can custody the Bitcoin or other assets or information on behalf of the community. And it does that with incredible levels of privacy. It allows for much lower costs, so it makes it more affordable for parts of the world where existing systems are not affordable. The privacy makes it more practical for parts of the world where you having access to private money and private communication is important. For example, if you're living under an authoritarian regime. And it has extensibility and so on. So it can be upgraded to have the functionality that is fit for purpose for your community. And that's what the Fedimint system allows.
Nice. Okay. And do we need to explain what an actual Fedimint is, do you think?
I think, no, we have, I think we're getting into technical detail. We can explain it. But as I said, it's a community custody platform. It's a system that allows you to store money and transfer that money privately around from one person to another within a community. Yeah. And that's, I think, at a technical level, that's all you need to understand. It beyond, without going into more detail, because I think more and more we realize that going down the technical approach distracts. It's a different audience. If you have a highly technical audience and they want to understand the detail, they can. But I think it's much more important to elevate the conversation to who needs this sort of thing now, who will need it in the future, hint, almost everyone, but who needs it now? Some of the most disempowered communities in the world. Yeah. And we focus on finding the people who need it and approaching them. And this is where the second part of our business is the on-the-ground support, called the Fedi order. Yeah, and those, it's made up of Fedi Knights or Fedi Knights, and they locate communities, educate communities about Fedimint, but also about Bitcoin and Lightning and other freedom technologies, and then support them. Because these communities, you can't just throw them software and expect it to work. You need to have these two things working in hand. you need to have people on the ground who actually care about the community, understand the community, which is why often companies in the West fail, because they don't really care about these communities. They care about too much about the technology. They don't really understand the communities because they're not part of those communities. And that's a key part of our USP. And this is why people who maybe even way more resource than us will not be able to succeed in these markets, because they're invisible to them. It's a psychological different dimension.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, okay, yeah, let's definitely park the technical stuff. There are plenty of podcasts in which you go into this in depth, which I can list down below. And yeah, I really want to get a sense of where Fedi is today and sort of what metrics you look at to indicate what successes Fedi is having, where you're seeing those successes. I'm sort of listing out a load of topics, but you can answer whatever you like of it. And then sort of, I know that you're talking about this next phase because Fedi's gone from its sort of 0 to 1 moment. Now it's going from its, I guess, 1 to 10 before it goes 10 to 100. Is that a fair way of sort of encapsulating where Fedi is? And if there's anything sort of that surprised you along this journey of bringing Fedi into more and more communities around the world? Because basically, I just want to know, I mean, I haven't seen it enough firsthand. I've used Fedi, say, at BTC Prague, and I joined the Afro-Bitcoin Fedimint last year. I looked on the Fedi app, yesterday, and I was trying to join random Fedimints, and they all kind of look similar. But that's because I presume a lot of these Fedimints are private for reasons, they can't be organizing. Imagine you're living in Hong Kong during the Chinese crackdown of 2019, 2020. You might use a Fedimint, for example, right, to organize your team.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Or imagine you're a family living in, I don't know, the Ivory Coast, and you're looking to stack sats. So it also might be a reasonable solution for you. So what are you able to talk about in geographies or regions that speak to success?
I would say, two things. Where are we in the cycle?
Okay.
And I think it's an interesting thing to delve into. And also why you haven't seen it is also an interesting thing for us to explore and discuss. So where are we in the cycle? You said we're presumably at 0 to 1, and then 1 to, and then the next stage is 1 to 1,000. I would say no, that's not correct. There are three phases for a startup like ours, and different startups could maybe have different phases, but for me, there are 3 phases. And there's the initialization phase. That's I'm thinking, and this is, I guess you can apply this to many endeavors. This is the phase where you just get your ingredients together. You have an idea for a new type of cake. So the initialization phase will be to sort of have a theory of how we bake the cake, buy all the ingredients, and bring all the ingredients to the table. That's the initialization phase. And you've now brought all the ingredients to the table, and you've got a rough plan of how it works. And then you have the product market fit phase, or the market product fit phase. Okay. People often use these words interchangeably or misunderstand what they mean. But in our case, we're focusing more on market product fit. We'll come back to those. And that's the phase where you now take these ingredients and you experiment and you try to make different cakes, and you test it out with different sample audiences. And you start seeing which versions of the cake really are a hit. And once you have early interest, but you keep refining, and you can probably stop at slight interest, moderate interest, or people are literally addicted to this. This is like sugary cocaine almost to people. This new cake that you created, and it's a visual wonder. And that's really strong market product fit. And it's also really strong product market fit in that case. And that's the second phase. And then the final phase is, once you've now got this formula, you know how to do it, you know why it's interesting, you know who it's most interesting for, you can go off and create a shop, or you can go off and franchise it or whatever, and you can start to just rinse, repeat, and grow. Focusing on the communities that, or the groups of people who find it most interesting, and really understanding your messaging. Everything could be focused on what you know is what people like about it and why they like it, and make sure you deliver a good product. That's the growth phase, and that goes on forever. And interestingly enough, the more effort you spend in the market product fit and product market fit phases, the the easier and more powerful and more ultimately successful the growth phase is.
Yeah.
A lot of people just it's sort of working, and then they jump to the next phase. They rush. They have as people in the Bitcoin space like to say, they have a high time preference. So it's sort of working. Let's just jump to the next. No, this is that, but that's a choice anyone can make. So we have just recently finished the initialization phase, and so you can call that not 0 to 1. I would say 0 to 0.1.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because you haven't yet built the ideal cake. You built something. Maybe you've got some dough and you've done some samples, but you haven't really completed the process of perfecting the product. So I would say 0 to 0.1. And we are in the product market fit phase. The launch video that we did was to announce to the world that we've actually formally transitioned from the initialization phase to the market product fit phase.
Okay.
People sometimes think we were going to, we're now going to go and grow. No, that's not the intention. It's now we can start. There's a long line of communities that have been interested in working with us and are willing to experiment and give us feedback and be patient and work and adjust, and so that we can perfect the product. And so this was to say, okay, we're here. We have a whole new category of freedom technology, of community super apps. And we just want to make people know that this is the category that we've created. No one else is in this category. And that's what our objective was, just to put a stake in the sand. But now, over the coming months, is where we perfect. So that's the phase. And at the end of the product market fit phase, that's when we have one. That's a 0.1 to 1.
Okay, yeah.
And then it's growth phase, 1 to infinity. So that's to be clear. Now, in terms of why you haven't seen it, partly because of where we are in the phase, and it's also partly because the communities that we're working with, the vast majority of them you're not going to see
ever.
And you probably may never see them ever.
Okay.
No. Yeah, because it's a privacy preserving tool.
I mean,
some of them want to talk about it, and we have to think about that. There's certain features we want to add to the product to make it safe for them to talk about it, and others they may never want to talk about it. And you may see it in the growth phase in revenues, but you're not necessarily going to see it. Our objective is not to be famous; it's to be effective. Our objective is not to level up our Twitter account or our Nost account, follow account, is to level up humanity. So
when you say that, I actually asked this morning, what questions would you like to ask Obi? And a couple of the comments were, why doesn't he post enough on Twitter? On Twitter.
I rarely post even on Twitter. I mean,
well, because you're busy doing stuff.
I'm doing proof of work, not proof of talk. And there's no problem with proof of talk. It's needed, and it's hard work when it's done as a job.
Yeah.
But my core job is to disempower communities everywhere, and the skills that we have to achieve that are around building these on the ground incredible expert support networks, like a decentralized genius bar, the Fedi order, and supporting these communities directly, and also listening to what they say, and then adjusting and then taking the technologies that are out there, the freedom technologies that are out there, and building one app that brings it all together. Because all of the stuff is out there. There are so many sites that allow you to, and apps that allow you to do incredible things, from B2C Maps and Bitrefill and Unleash.chat and more.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are technologies like Lightning, like Fedimint, like Bitcoin. In future, maybe Arc. And Nostr is really good for discovery. Some other aspects, the privacy aspects, needs to be worked on, because privacy is really important for many of these communities. So it makes it not fully usable for just conversation, but for discovery it's useful. And we bring them all together into one simple to use UX. And it needs to be way more simple than it is now.
Right.
Whatever you think is needed to make a simple app, when you're dealing with the communities we're dealing with, you realize that we need to be orders of magnitude simpler.
Okay. Is it going to feel a bit like a WeChat in the future? Is that kind of like the
I mean, a WeChat is a super app.
Yeah, no,
and
WeChat.
So
like,
it's
CBDC aside, it's an amazing app. It's super useful.
WeChat and Line and Gojek in Indonesia. Yeah, these are all. So it's like those.
Okay.
And Telegram now, because you have mini apps in Telegram. You have payments in Telegram. You have chat in Telegram, and X.com, Twitter, wants to become a super app as well.
Yep.
You have it a little bit in Nostr, but again, the privacy needs to be worked on. But then the problem with all of these super apps is that the privacy is either non-existent or requires a lot of trust in the centralized party. And also the other thing on censorship resistance, because they're all centralized, they're not censorship resistant. Yeah. With our system, we don't need to run the infrastructure. The communities run the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So we are not a attack vector. If we just a few months ago, Signal was turned off in China. China called Apple from the App Store. I mean,
okay.
China called Apple and said no, and then China says no. To paraphrase, computer says no, and then it's off because it's centralized. Yeah. So any centralized offering is not censorship resistant. The good thing is Signal is private. So even it can be turned off and on, but you cannot have your conversations decrypted. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily the case for Telegram. On the other hand, you can have your conversations decrypted. You have to just trust that the Telegram organization won't do that. Yeah, but when it comes to WeChat or others, I mean, most people, or WhatsApp or so, most people don't really believe that if asked, they won't provide the information requested. Because with Fedi, on the monetary side, we use this protocol called eCash, which provides cryptographic near perfect privacy. Mm-hmm. So, and on the chat sides, we use a protocol called Matrix, which is a decade mature federated chat protocol, which also provides strong encryption guarantees to the same level as Signal. They use a similar ratchet-based encryption mechanism, but basically you can be confident that your conversations are private as well. Mm-hmm. And in all these cases, we enable or want to enable communities to be able to run their own chat server, their own community banking, and so on. So they are in control. So they don't have to trust us. And also the code is all source available. And within 12 months, it will be fully open source. And the only reason why we have a delay is because we want to make sure that we can iterate quickly and make sure it's good before we give it to the open source community. Mm-hmm. So every community is able to have the power of a WeChat, the power of a Telegram in the hands of the community. And that makes it, the one downside we have over the existing systems is, two. One, we're younger. So some of these have been around for nearly a decade. So we've had more chance to build a sophisticated, slick app. But I think we're catching up at a rate of knots. And the other advantage is doing something in a centralized way is always easier than doing it in a decentralized or even a federated way. So you'll always see this initial, people who have a very high time preference will find these, what they see from these more centralized offerings or simpler offerings more exciting in the beginning, but they will hit limits. And that's the problem, when you'll always be limited in terms of the protection you can provide your users. If you start off with a centralized approach, you should think about the story of the three little pigs and the wolf. And it is exactly that. There's people who are building these towers on bases of straw and then building it on wood. And what we're doing and what Bitcoin did, and I think Lightning as well, and Matrix, is start off a base of brick. Okay. It's not even brick, it's steel, it's industrial building scale steel. And but it means that you don't see the towers early on. You don't have the click and button, and you're not getting to the paint work and what wallpaper you'll use as early as the others. But when the attack comes
Mm-hmm.
on your privacy, when the attack comes on your sovereignty, on your liberty, you will then see the value proposition. Now, if you're in the West, and that might, I hazard to guess another reason why you don't see this, if you're in the West, you don't really need to worry about these things right now, let's be honest. You can talk about it hypothetically, but you don't need to, at least today. But this is why we focus on communities that are disempowered today, because they see the problem today and therefore they value the solution today.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I was actually wanting to drill down a bit more into the privacy, and that kind of leads into the incentives of why someone might create a federation and then start using Fedi in a community setting. But just one more thing on the privacy. So I've been trying to cover Bitcoin stories all around the world for like 4 years now. And, I've covered stories in Cuba, I've covered stories in Senegal, South Africa, places where it's really, really dangerous to talk about these freedom tools publicly. So I totally understand why it is just so important to be aware of that and to note it. But then I've also been had it thrown in my face a few times that, oh, well, you haven't told us the full story and you're protecting their privacy because there's no actual story there, or because it's not actually happening, or the classic thing of no one's actually using it, because you can't have these really easy to point to testimonials of, oh, I use Bitcoin to send money across borders, right? I use money to send Bitcoin across war zones. And because they don't have the points to point at and say, oh, look, it's there. This is why I really wanted to make that documentary about Cuba, right? Because I wanted to literally say, listen, these are the faces. Okay, some of them are blurred, obviously, but these people are genuinely running nodes with old...
You're putting them at risk as well.
Exactly. And then the onus on you. And I lost sleep over that documentary. I'm still worried about Catria and Forte, who are in this documentary. They're still safe at the moment, and hopefully I'll be speaking in El Salvador in January, actually, just on that. But it's a real, it's not a cat and mouse. It's a catch-22.
Chicken
right?
in the egg.
Yeah.
Catch-22 is a better one. Yeah.
You want to tell their story.
Ask ChatGPT will tell us the correct word.
I was going to say fish and chips or a knife and fork. You want to tell their story because it's so important to highlight to all these sort of naysayers that yes, it's actually being used in privacy-preserving ways in places where it matters the most. We're dismantling communism with these tools. We're fighting back against North Korean authoritarianism with these tools, but telling the stories, it puts you at risk, it puts them at risk, and it could bring the whole thing shattering down. So is that kind of what is going on with
that is well, so I think it's a bit of both.
Okay.
So as I said, we're somewhere between 0.1 to 1.
Right.
In phase one, from the initialization, you need to just let people know that there's this incredible technology, Fedimint. There's this incredible idea of taking Fedimint as the last piece in the jigsaw with Bitcoin and Lightning and Matrix and merging it together to make this community super app, but also the understanding that we need these on the ground Fedi order. And also we wanted to raise awareness for this, raise excitement for this, raise capital, and raise I don't want to say an army, but a force, a Jedi force or a Fedi force to go off and make this happen.
Right.
And so that phase, we had to go around, and there was a lot of public speaking, a lot of educating and talking, both publicly and privately, about the potential. And so if you take a time machine back a year ago or two, you would have seen me doing a lot more public speaking.
Yep.
Now that in this phase, the market product fit phase, and people who don't understand what it means should go off and read, because I've had some debates about what it means. But the market product fit phase, where we know our market, and so we are trying to understand it really, really well, and then adjust the product to meet the market. Whereas market fit is you have a product and you then try to find markets for it to fit. But we are sticking with our market because we know this is a market that we exist to serve and we're passionate about, and so on. So in this phase, it's much more about, we already have enough people who are that we know and have deep relationships within this market, and there is really no benefit to trying to add 10 or 100 times more at this stage, because you'll spread yourself too thin. And this is about the details and really going into detail to figure out what adjustments need to be made to make an ideal product.
Okay.
And too much would be noise at this stage. So this is about rolling your sleeves up, going back into engineer, build mode, and working with the existing people.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, and then finally in the growth phase, you now know it works. And to the communities that you're trying to talk to, you're going to be very public.
Okay.
But if you're not in those communities, if you're being very laser focused, you still won't. People might not even know what you're doing, but in the markets that you're focusing on, everybody will know you. Okay. So we're in this sort of market product fit phase, maybe slightly further, more progressed in that phase than reasonably, probably around halfway through that phase.
Okay.
So that means that there's still some things we need to do to perfect the product. I would not, by the standards that we have, which are very high, because MVP in many cases is near perfection. Because if you get it wrong, it's not just someone loses a few sats or it delays. It can literally affect people's monthly living costs or their freedom, in certain cases. So the standards that we have are very high, and we are not there yet. So I don't think we have reached an area of really, really strong traction, but we have definite signs of strong interest, but it's not really strong traction.
Yeah. Can you speak to any specific geographies or regions, or just, is there a community, say, Burkina Faso? Is there one?
And on the other side, that's the other thing. I think we have this constant struggle between how much we want to be public,
right,
and who it affects as well.
So I'm not going to know where some of these communities are.
I mean, I can so the types of communities we deal with are in three categories. I mean, there are some exceptions, but the vast majority of it is free. So there are humanitarian aided communities.
Okay.
So humanitarian agency aided communities. There are human rights defender aided communities. And then there are Bitcoin aided communities.
Right, okay.
So the Bitcoin aided communities, we're very public about. These include places like Bitcoin Akasi and many others.
I saw Herman's testimonial on the Fedi website. Yeah, in Mandarin, there must be some Fedi going on in Akasi.
And they're experimenting. And the good thing about the Bitcoin aided communities is that they're already very technically savvy. What's interesting there is they have other Bitcoin focused solutions as well that they're experimenting with as well, which they should do. And we can see what they like about us, what they like about others, and we can get clear, efficient background, because they just tend to be a little bit more, or the elements of the community are a little bit more technically minded, so they can give much more direct feedback.
Okay.
They might often veer towards specifically wanting Bitcoin specific features because they're popular at the moment versus they're really, really needed on the ground, and that's the risk there. But the pro is they're Bitcoiners, so they're going to hold you to very high standards and remind you of some of your philosophical objectives. To always try to push towards more censorship resistance. Always try to push towards more self-sovereignty as far as you can do, as long as it doesn't risk the sanctity of the users or the citizens of a community's money. Mm-hmm. The human rights defenders communities, those are the ones I'm going to be least comfortable giving you the name, because it could represent risks for those communities.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can say that there are communities that we've dealt with in as 3 different continents for sure.
3 of the 7.
Yeah. Well, not Antarctica and not Arctica.
that was a given.
Yeah, and not Australasia. Okay, there you go. You can cut it down.
Okay.
So, and not North America.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking at Africa and the Middle East and Asia.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. What can you talk to me?
No. But then you have the humanitarian organizations,
right? Okay.
Or aided communities, and so we recently worked with, and we've had great experience working with RefUnite.
Okay.
In sub-Saharan Africa.
Don't tell me that you partnered with Refunite because of Jedi Knight, references. It wasn't.
Oh, I didn't actually think about that.
You did.
No, I never thought about that. That's actually really interesting. Refunite, Jedi Knight. I did a Fedi Refunite. Yeah.
There's something you can do there for sure.
Yeah, probably. I really didn't think about that. I like that. But no, that wasn't the reason why. But the people on the team are very much into that we do. We're very much into their sci-fi. So
is this a theme, the sci-fi in the aid industry?
I think the correlation between people who are into Bitcoin and sci-fi is probably pretty high.
That's
to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. There's going to be a high crossover. But the experience with them has helped us make a number of really important and powerful changes to the offering, and humbled us in what we realized that we didn't know.
Okay.
It helped us realize that the amount that we don't know is way more than we thought we didn't know.
Right.
And we've had to go back to the drawing board on a lot of features. We've had to add whole pieces of functionality which are not used in the default app, but are incredibly powerful augmented features within the app that are very popular in many of these communities. So, for example, one thing that people are sort of aware of is stable balances, which allows, because people need stability of
I wanted to ask about this. This is good. Yes.
So we can come on to that in a bit.
Yeah.
But
we can address it now.
And another one is a feature called multi-spend, which is really powerful as well. And so these are, and then there's many others which we're working on behind the scenes to build an offering that actually is useful for people.
So with Refunite, where is that in the world?
They deal with communities around the world, but we've worked with them predominantly in Africa.
Yeah.
I did a talk at with one of the senior project managers in Bitcoin Amsterdam. So that was where we actually went into more detail about some of the things we did. She did. I was interviewing her, and she explained a scenario where Fedi was used to help deliver aid recently to over 16,000 refugees.
Okay. So is this that last mile cash assistance solution?
Yeah. And also the delivery of aid. Also, it was in that case, I think it was the remittance side.
Okay.
Would historically take them up to a week to get from money in the West to be allocated for aid to be actually effectively being deployed in people's hands.
Okay.
And here they were able to take it down to a day, and also the cost was significantly less. It was less than even 20%, less than 5%, so 1/20th of the cost.
Gosh.
And a day. So that can be delivered with things like stablecoins as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say a bit of a curveball question, but whenever I bring up aid and Bitcoin Lightning remittances and Fedi, those kinds of things, the classic thing that gets thrown back at me, particularly from the crypto space, is, Stellar can do that. Stellar's been doing that for years. Stellar's amazing in the aid space. And
Stellar's doing some interesting stuff, yeah. And stablecoins and Stellar. And others. There's another one I'm trying to remember the name, but there's a few others.
But is there a way you address that? Like, say you pitch an aid agency, I don't know, it's UNHCR or something, and you basically say, listen, we think that your refugees could be using Fedi, might be a better way for them to organize, for us to get funds to them, this kind of stuff. And they say, oh, well, we've actually been talking to the guys at Stellar about their wonderful blockchain, and it's done some great stuff in the Philippines. We want to try it in, I don't know.
No, I don't feel you need to try and compete. First of all, if something solves a problem for people,
then
our objective is something that we've had to, in this phase of market product fit, which is different. If you're product market fit, then you're going to say, well, my product is Bitcoin, and I'll find a market that cares about Bitcoin.
Okay.
And you're going to end up with Bitcoin communities only. If you're saying my market is helping the most disempowered communities around the world,
Yep.
That's my market. And I believe, because I have analyzed these cryptocurrencies and other technologies for well over a decade now, that Bitcoin is the best solution. But if it turned out it wasn't, or someone has found maybe a suboptimal solution, but it's still good enough for them right now, then who am I to suggest that they change? What we're trying to, if your objective is to try to empower communities and it's working, then congratulations, good luck. Because until everybody, I say this a lot, but until everybody on this planet is free, no one truly is.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to try and delay someone being empowered because they're somehow using a slightly suboptimal technology. That being the case, and also this, unfortunately, there are billions of people on the planet who need help. So the more people who are working on this, the better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. It's more than half the planet that needs help. So if they go off and suboptimally but still effectively help a group of people, good on them.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I asked.
I do think that from the normal user's point of view, on the ground, they don't really care if it's Bitcoin or Stellar or Lightning or Arc. They just don't care. They just want a solution. Some of those solutions can put them at risk. So, for example, they may be using, some people may have used Telegram and it's worked fine, and it's worked fine up to today. And most people say, well, it's worked the last month or the last year, so it's working. And it will be working until it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, unfortunately, a number of people will then be put at risk, and then they will look around frantically for an alternative solution, and they'll find something that's more a better solution. And so, unfortunately, most people learn, an intelligent person learns from their mistakes, and that's how most people learn. A wise person learns from other people's, and but most people will get their hands burnt and learn, and
Okay.
And we've tried to prevent that. And when we can get to someone first, but again, most people have not had the ability to be taught by us or anyone else in the world. So we just focus on the market that hasn't been approached, as opposed to trying to debate with some market or some group of people who have.
Yes.
And that's still hundreds of millions of people. And we can provide, but we do need to provide a solution that provides stability of value now. We believe that for the long run, building on the steel foundations, it should not be backed by a centralized system. So any stablecoin based system will be backed by money in a bank.
Okay.
We talk about stablecoins as running on top of blockchains. That's actually the wrong way of thinking about stablecoins. We think about technologies in layers. If you are using a stablecoin, the base layer is the one that determines the value, the one that provides you the fundamental protection. So the base layer of a stablecoin is some bank. It's actually, that's not even the base layer. The base layer is of a USD stablecoin is the US government.
Yeah.
The next layer is a bank where the money that's been printed by the government is held in, the layer 1. Then the layer 2 will be the private company that is managing that account. So Tether or US Circle is the layer 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then the layer 3 is the given blockchain that they've chosen to hold some of their cryptocurrency in, Ethereum, Stellar, so on.
Yeah.
That's layer 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if you're using a roll up or so on, then that's layer 4 when you finally actually, and it will be the same if it was on Bitcoin. If it's on Bitcoin, when Bitcoin comes in, it will be after the US government, after the bank or the treasury or bond or Cantor Fitzgerald where the money's held, after Tether or Circle, and it's only at layer 4 does Bitcoin come in if we have a stable coin running on Bitcoin.
Right.
You have to think about it in terms of ability to censor, and with Bitcoin, the layer 1 is Bitcoin. There is nothing below that, and it's the most decentralized money that exists. And in the case of Stellar, it would have to be Stellar being the base asset, but no one wants to hold. You might be using Stellar, but they're not using Stellar as the base. They're using a stable coin as the base, in which case Stellar is layer 4 in that scenario, versus if you're backing your USD by Bitcoin, then Bitcoin's layer 1. Your community, in the case of Fedimint, is layer 2, and then the assets that you want to stabilize in USD is the layer 3 running on top of Bitcoin, but it's backed by Bitcoin and your community, effectively. And so in scenarios where you see, and you do see this, if you look at and you do the research, both Tether and Circle will actively censor transactions, block transactions per government request from governments around the world, not just the US government. It's government requests from around the world. If your stablecoin on Stellar, on Ethereum, or so on gets blocked, then it doesn't matter the security properties of your token. Now, if you're for the humanitarian audiences, that's unlikely to happen, because it's unlikely that there's going to be a request to block the capital of a village in Guatemala. But if you're living in an authoritarian regime, that risk is very, very real. And so holding your money in a stablecoin right now is slightly better than holding it in a bank. But over time, it's tending towards it being the same in terms of its ability to be censored.
Yeah, sure.
And so it depends on the audience.
Okay. And so the sort of, I guess, the mistakes you've made in this 0.1 to 1 moment, and what you've sort of learned from them, the iterations you've gone through.
Like every day we're making mistakes. I did a talk recently about being anti-fragile, and I'm making the mistake of, well, not the mistake. It was not a mistake. As Jeff Booth, who's on our board, tells me, like, you made a decision with the information at the time that was the correct decision. So there's no mistakes. It's just, you just learn and you move forward. And now with new information and new learnings, you make a new decision. So at the time when I went to university, I realized even before university, I was super into computers, and I was into entrepreneurship. I was working on businesses from a very young age, and I got to university. I studied computer science. I was there at the dawn of the World Wide Web, the mid-90s. And so I started working some early sites for BBC, ITV, and beyond. And then when I came to graduate, instead of continuing my entrepreneurial path, I was really afraid. Came from a very poor working class council estate background. I had no safety net, so I became a computer engineer. That career went really well. I went all the way up to being CTO of many organizations, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And the more success I had, the harder it was, the more I became trapped by my fear. My older brother passed away suddenly. This was after 15 years of being a CTO. It's very devastating. We still actually, it was very mysterious. We still don't even know why he passed away. And that's the thing that snapped me out of my fear prison and made me decide, look, I'm just going to do what I know I want to do and become an entrepreneur. But that process was a process of constantly making mistakes, constantly falling down, but then getting back up, learning, getting better, falling, getting back up, learning, getting better. And without realizing it, I learned to become anti-fragile, because anti-fragility is the art of falling, but then actually getting stronger because you fall.
Bouncing.
Bouncing back. You don't just get back up. That's being tough. That's just staying the same. But you actually improve. That's also, during that process, I started to get this entrepreneurial thing. I discovered Bitcoin. And what was the affinity for me, as I realized, it was the first anti-fragile money. It doesn't, the first sign of an issue, cause a fork, like in the case of Ethereum. That shows it's fragile. If it cannot handle that, its evidences it's fragile. With Bitcoin, when it fails, it just takes it and gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The whole proof of work mechanism is the more attacked, the attack strengthens it. It's literally an anti-fragile technology. And so I felt an affinity to it. But what I've learned is through my life, I fail my way to success, and that's the way you do it. And that's the same for us. We have we have a set of incredibly demanding. The Bitcoin community is demanding, but this community of human rights defenders activists make the Bitcoin community look like the most accommodating, relaxed people, because they're dealing with people's lives. They're dealing with, serious situations, or they're being debanked, and they literally trying to figure out how to pay just the ability to their living costs for the next year or the next month, because they're being debanked. Things that in the West we can't even imagine having to deal with. And so that for me, and for our team who's anti-fragile, is an incredible honor and opportunity to be able to support, because you have the ability to fail a lot, and therefore your ability to learn is far greater. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it. And so we're constantly learning about how the app should look, how the UX should be, what devices we should support, mm-hmm. and on and on.
Okay. And why we're going to do a lightning round in 1 second. Just one more question on this. Why do you want to serve disempowered communities? Why you? Why shouldn't this be done by someone else or a government, or
I mean, it should be done by other people, and it should be done by governments and everyone. I think I said the statement before. There's two parts. I'll start with the end, which is the realization that until everyone on this planet is free, no one truly is. That's super important. Until everyone on this planet is free, no one truly is. You cannot, and even if you take it to a local context, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable thinking about this greater picture, but you can imagine if you're in a world where everyone feels free, feels empowered, then just for you and your family, that's a safer world. Go to parts of the world where most people are living in abject poverty and feel basically they don't have a hope, or they feel hopeless. Those are not comfortable and safe places to be. And as we see for you, so even if you're just thinking about your own context, you will intuitively know that that's not a good world to be in. You might be comfortable, but then you've got this, then you zoom out. It's like a sci-fi dystopian Elysium-like movie where you've got this area of this bubble of supposed freedom. Then you zoom out and you realize that this bubble is surrounded by security guards and so on, and walls and fences to keep out the masses, who are the hopeless masses. And one chink in the armor and you're just overthrown, because you're also now fragile. You're bubble boy versus, as Andreas Antonopoulos would say, bubble boy versus sewer rat. If you're in this bubble, it might seem fine, but you're actually fragile. That makes you fragile because you're not exposed to the reality of the world. And what you want to do is be able to go anywhere, wherever you are in the world, and feel comfortable. And that only can happen if everybody is empowered. Okay. So even if you're completely selfish, you still want this for selfish reasons. In my case, there's two parts. When I grew up, I was a child of two worlds. I was conceived in Nigeria. I was born in the UK. And I was constantly going backwards and forwards between these two countries. And again, that gave me the privilege of being able to observe. It was like a tale of two, like Sliding Doors, the movie, where you see two parallel worlds from one slight difference. My father had stayed in Nigeria. I could have seen what my life was like. My father decided to go to the US. I could see what my life was like. And my father stayed in the UK. I saw what my life was like. I would have been slightly taller if I was in the US. Slightly bigger. I would have been significantly smaller if I was in Nigeria. Significantly more unwell, and our earning potential was very different, purely from where we were born. And this was something that was interesting to see. And this felt like an inefficiency in my engineering mind. Not just it's unfair and so on, but right now worldwide there must be 20 Einsteins, 20 Nikola Teslas and more around the world, but just because of accident of birth, they are losing out, which means the world is losing out, because just one of those people can change the world. And so imagine the potential the human potential that we as the world are missing out on because we aren't able to empower these people. So we're all losing out. Fast forward, so my previous business, I've discovered Fedimint. I luckily happened across a hackers congress in Prague. My soon-to-be, I didn't realize, co-founder who invented Fedimint. I became a big cheerleader for the technology. I wasn't thinking of, this was just sold my business. I wasn't thinking of starting a startup. I talked a little bit about it at Bitcoin Miami with my co-founder. Alex Garstein asked me to go to the Oslo Freedom Forum. Alex Garstein of the Human Rights Foundation. And I went there, and that's when my life changed, because I saw these incredibly brave men and women and heard their stories of bravery, of imprisonment, of mutilation, of just continually getting stronger, the epitome of anti-fragility, and never giving up, never surrendering, like Galaxy Quest, one of my favorite sort of comedy sci-fi movies. And I realized that that's when I realized that I couldn't just, I've been fortunate for where I was and what I've managed to achieve, but much of my success had nothing to do with me. It was just through accident of birth, accident of being healthy, accident of being, whatever it may be. And I needed to do something. And I also realized, just by happenstance, that I had a technology that could actually help them through, or I was aware of it, which was Fedimint. And so that was the other thing, finding the cohort, finding the market, which is why it's market product fit. This is the market that needs us the most, needs us now. So I'm going to service that market, because it's not because it's cool, because I lose words. Normally I don't lose words, but it's something that just feels like a calling to do, to service this market. And we must service them, because if you can do it, you must do it. That's just my nature. And when I realized I can help, then it became a calling. And I said, until everybody is free, no one truly is, and I will continue to work and support them. And this, and I'm going to use the skills I have, which is to speak about what we're doing, tell the stories, and also amass the Fedi force to build solutions for this market. It so turns out that if you service this market and you service them well, then everyone else in the world is much easier to service, because you start with the hardest first. A former US president said, we go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. And if you're able to do that, the incidental technologies that were created as a result change the world. And we and our investors and the team feel very confident that's the case here.
Lovely, yeah. Like how managed to get the moon landing into your motivations about moon landing. Well.
We had to go back to the stars, We always had started off with Star Wars.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And just not the wars bit, hopefully, but the stars bit.
And just on the Oslo Freedom Forum, your talk with Alex this year. Is it still this year? It is still this year. It was just after, I think it was just after or just before the Iranian opera singer.
Yeah.
And, they were doing a free Tumar, I forget his name, and that's so embarrassing, but the Iranian singer and rapper who was jailed in Iran for singing and rapping because it's illegal to do so. Well, they did the big appeal for him, and it was really quite moving. And the second after they did the appeal, an Iranian opera singer came on the stage and sang this most beautiful, like majestic and just powerful song. And you're just there thinking, she's Iranian, she escaped the regime so she could sing. And here she is practicing music. And in Iran, they can't. And we know that because there's the singer and activist who's locked up. Well, he was freed yesterday. So I just wanted to pass on the good news. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So they're
doing wonderful things. And as I said, it's not one person, it's not one company or one organization. The more people doing this, the better. And the more people realize that this is how we advance as a society. The measure of a society is how it treats its weakest, not its strongest, the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if we realize that we live in a global village now, then society isn't just the people that you see here. It's people everywhere. If you can help, then you must.
Okay, right. Lightning round.
Uh-oh.
One or two words per question. Maybe 3. I know you're an engineer, so you're going to go very rigid with this. You can be flexible, okay? But it's very basic, simple questions. Can pineapple go on pizza?
Of course.
Of course. What will the Bitcoin price hit? What will be the peak for the Bitcoin price this bull run? You can be a range as well if you like.
Higher than today.
Okay. Bits, sats, or Bitcoins?
Millisats.
Okay. Nice. It's such contrarian stuff here. What's one thing Bitcoiners need to do better as a community?
Play werewolf.
Nice. Okay. We're going to have to explain that in a second. What's one thing you would ask Satoshi Nakamoto if you could? This doesn't have to be one word, of course. This can be a full-on question.
Pineapple on pizza.
Okay. And what is your favorite Bitcoin meme, if you have one?
No favorite.
No favorite? Okay. Is there a go-to or like one that you quite like?
No.
No. Okay. I thought it'd be like a Star Wars one or something that resonated, or like a sci-fi one that resonates with
Bitcoin is in a way the ultimate meme.
Okay.
So then Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's the meme then.
Yeah, Bitcoin is the meme. You've gone so contrarian with those, but that is to be expected. Okay, so let's talk scaling Bitcoin. I know that Fedi gets some pushback between the Bitcoin Amish and the Bitcoin Puritans with regards to the fact that, it's community custody, which is, of course, against the key tenets of Bitcoin, which is you must hold your own keys. How do you address this question? How do you sort of not fend off that? Because I know it's bullshit having been to places where there are community banking as a thing and where there is an Uncle Jim who you can trust. And that's how the community works. It's like a social structure that is very hard for people that live in the West in a sort of gated, safe community. That they can't sort of picture that. I think that's part of the problem of why they think, you can't share a UTXO, you can't create a community, for example. But how do you manage that?
I tried many things in the past. And one thing I would counter, I think you're an example.
Yeah.
Are many people in the West who do understand it, and more are understanding it. But I think most will understand it when it's demonstrated to them. Okay. 75% of people on the planet, if you do your Myers-Briggs, are sensing versus intuiting. So intuiting is to sort of understand something that you haven't experienced yourself, or you haven't seen, you haven't held, you haven't touched yourself. And sensing is to understand something once you've picked. I understand what it is to be a plastic bottle because I picked it up. But someone could explain, well, this is plastic and bottles are containers. Can you intuit a bottle? And 25% could if they've never seen it before. In the Bitcoin space, even more are of the intuiting form, but still, it's going to be a large percentage. And so for most people, they won't get it until they see it.
Right. Okay.
And if they don't get it, and it doesn't matter. I mean, there are more than half people on the planet who do get it and live it every day. So this is why it's important for us to be market product focused. We're focusing on the market that gets it.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily that gets it and needs it. And that's when you take those groups, there's a smaller crossover with the communities that we naturally talk to.
Okay.
And so if they don't think it's valuable, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they think it's valuable or not, but it's just that idea of, that one of those really important messages of sovereignty, you must own your own keys. You must have those UTXOs to your name.
I think that's an important message, and we should try to achieve that. And there are people who are working on ways on reducing the trust even further.
Okay.
And I'm really excited about many of those ideas as well. But we have a technology that I think already aligns with the way the people we're trying to help think and act. Mm-hmm. And so we're progressing with that. We think it solves the problem today. Mm-hmm. When those things come out, as I say, Fedi uses the best freedom technologies to empower communities everywhere. And so if new technology comes out that actually improves on what we have, we'll be the first in line to, and is stable enough and reliable enough as well, because that's part of it. It can't be some theoretical white paper, but it has to be working and battle tested, because this is not a science experiment in high school. This is, something that's be battle tested in day-to-day use. But if it's reliable enough and mature enough, we would switch and use it. We have no allegiance. If something becomes better than Lightning, we'll switch to Lightning. If something becomes from that, let's say Arc, for example, I think Arc's actually, its power is to supercharge Lightning. But let's say for some reason it somehow replaces the need for it in 10 years, we'll switch.
Okay.
And if something provides a custody solution for communities with the abilities of eCash and Fedimint, but somehow provides even less requirement of trust and more censorship resistance, then we'll switch to use that. But they don't exist today. Yeah. And so we use the best freedom technologies that are available today.
Nice. I mean, do you agree
Very pragmatic about this.
Yeah, no.
And in life, you have to be pragmatic if you want to solve problems.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know you're like a Bitcoin maxi, but you're not like a Bitcoin, Puritan or.
I'm a Bitcoin rationalist.
Rationalist, yeah.
And the only reason I use Bitcoin is because I review and test against other cryptocurrencies in terms of properties very regularly.
Yep.
And very objectively, and each time I do, other cryptocurrencies fall far short and are wanting, and Bitcoin. The only thing I've seen over a decade is the gap between Bitcoin and others widening. So if you extrapolate from there, that's not a good direction of travel for other cryptocurrencies. Belief by other crypto advocates is noticeably waning. So again, it's still reasonably strong, but it's waning, and so that's a bad direction of travel. Yeah. While Bitcoin belief is growing, and this is when it's had no ICO, no external funding, no foundations, internal wars in the community, and it's still gaining dominance. There are over 2.4 million cryptocurrencies out there now. A couple of years ago, there was 200,000. A couple of years before, there were less than 50,000. Now there are 2.4 million. There are tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies being created every single day. And Bitcoin by itself, the slow, uninnovative cryptocurrency by itself represents more than the totality of the rest of that market combined. And that gap is just only growing. So that if you just step back and just look at the big picture, it might take another few more years, but it's going to just be Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I hosted a crypto event in Thailand recently, and I was going around the audience asking them what they hold, and 9 times out of 10 people were saying 80% Bitcoin, 20% meme coins.
Yeah, but if you went back a couple of years ago, it would be slightly
a lot of ETH, yeah.
Yeah, but you always have these temporary runs, and you'll see an over-representation right now because it's popular of other things like Solana or so on. But you know how this is going to play out. In 2 years' time, it'll be something else. It'll be Sui, or actually Ripple's just been shooting up recently, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about Ripple because most people follow the puck, and other people, and only a few people look at where the puck is going and go to there. And that's a lonely path because everybody's playing around with the ball, but the goal is over here. So I'll just walk to the goal while you all play around because the ball's going to end up at the goal. And that's the Bitcoin road. And it seems lonely, but your logic is sound. And others are just chasing the ball. Yeah. And so that's the majority of people, and they will eventually come around. But the ball is heading towards the goal. And when everybody's tired at the goal, you take the goal. And like a Gary Lineker.
It's coming home. If you want to go from this, it's coming home.
If you know your football... British football mythology. Gary Lineker was a notorious goal hanger. Yeah. He'll just hang around the goal, wait for people to play, and then when they're knackered, he'll just head the ball in.
One of the most decorated goal scorers.
Yeah, because it's very efficient. It works. It works. Okay. Work out where the ball is going and make sure you're there and ready.
Okay. So Roy Shenfield from Breeze describes Lightning as the lingua franca of the Bitcoin space. Yeah, you're nodding and saying yes. Do you agree with that? And why do you think that's the case? And can you speak specifically for why it's the lingua franca for Fedi? Because I know that it's kind of the thing that connects it all, isn't it?
So Fedi is a community custody system. It allows within Fedi, people can transfer value between themselves at very low cost with high levels of privacy at very high speed.
Yep.
But to send value outside of a community using Fedimint, you have to use either on-chain payments on Bitcoin or some other service. And the service that we build that's built in a standard to Fedimint is the Lightning Network. And that's because the Lightning Network is as was stated, is the lingua franca for the Bitcoin space. It's again, if you put it in the context of other cryptocurrencies, they have multiple chains, and each chain has different communities on them. In Bitcoin terms, we see those multiple chains as potentially being multiple different Fedimints.
Right.
Effectively, it's a direct correlation. You can send value in between them. You can add additional functionality within a Fedimint. You can extend it, for example, with stable balances and so on, and you can extend these with smart contracts. But to send value from one chain to another, or one Fedimint to another, or to someone in self-custody, you would need, in Bitcoin terms, you would use the Lightning Network. In these others, you'd use what are called cross-chain bridges.
Yeah.
But the problem is there's a plethora of cross-chain bridges. Most of them are unreliable. They often get hacked. They often lose value, where the Lightning Network has been being worked on and been hardened for several years. It's very mature. It's very reliable. And in Bitcoin, we've fortunately settled on basically one standard to send value, whether it's to a self-custodial wallet, to a centralized service like a Coinbase or so on, or whether it's to a community custody service like a Fedimint, or again a more centralized custodial service like a Cashew Mint.
Yeah.
But they all connect to each other by the Lightning Network. There are other alternatives that are people are looking at. There's like the Liquid Network, but even then it has the ability to communicate via Lightning.
Yeah.
And then there's things being talked about like Arc and BitVM, but again, it's very likely from talking to them that they'll support Lightning as well, because this is the international sort of airways or flight paths between different countries, or the motorways between different cities.
Oh, that's quite a nice way of looking at it.
And then the cities, in my mind, the cities I see as the Fedimints. Maybe smaller towns could be Cashew Mints, and if someone who is wealthy enough can have their own mansion with its own private country road directly off a motorway, and that will be someone who in the future, when the costs of using the Lightning Network and the Bitcoin network potentially a lot higher, is wealthy enough to self-custody. And so if you can have your own mansion and with its own private road, i.e. your own direct Lightning node and so on, and you have the monetary resources to maintain that, then go ahead and do it. But most people will live in cities.
Okay.
Or towns or villages or cities,
doing community custody instead, or a variation on that.
Yeah, effectively, the resources of the city are amortized or shared across all the people in the city, and that makes a lot more financial sense. The road leading to the city, the cost to maintain it is shared across 500,000 people versus one person.
Yeah.
You can afford it, good on you, but most people will share that cost, and they gain other benefits because inside the city, like one is Las Vegas and the other one is Reno.
Okay.
The motorway between them is the Lightning Network, but when you're in Vegas, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So all of the movements in there are private to Vegas.
Yeah.
And same as in Reno. But the road between it, we know, all we can know from analyzing the traffic is that someone in Vegas traveled to somewhere in Reno. Yep. We don't know who, and that still is
or how much they got on them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's still a very strong level of privacy. But within Reno or within Vegas, you have full privacy, and that is, I think, if you look at the world, that's how the world is scaled to billions of people. We don't live. The idea of one blockchain to rule them all, which say is a Solana idea, it will be, if you put it into city terms, you realize how ridiculous that is. That's the equivalent of everybody in the world living in one city.
Right.
It just doesn't scale. Cities don't scale. Mm-hmm. But the idea of everyone having their own Lightning network would be like everyone in the world having their own private road. The world will be all road.
Right, yeah.
So the balancing act is to have cities and towns connected by roads. That scales. We see that with the internet as well. If I have the other day I was having a call with you using some sort of messaging app.
Yeah.
We don't have call features in Fedi, so it wasn't Fedi right now. But I'm sure if it would have been if we have that. But you were using some sort of mobile provider. I don't know which one, but let's just say AT&T. Let's say you had Nosh. Yeah. And let's say I had, but that's a telecom provider for people who don't know. So you were using Nosh, but let's say AT&T, and I was using Vodafone, for example. Yeah. When we're making a call to each other, we would think we're using the internet, but we're not. I'm connecting up to Vodafone's intranet,
right?
And you're connecting up to AT&T's intranet, i.e. their internal mini city. And then Vodafone and AT&T are connecting to the actual internet between us. If you were to talk to someone else who was also using AT&T, you wouldn't connect to the internet. You would only you would use the internet protocol. The lingua franca will still be IP, the TCP/IP, the internet protocol, but you would actually be just transferring information within the infrastructure owned and operated by AT&T. You'll never actually touch the actual internet. And that's the same. The actual units of value being sent around are sats or bits or millisats but basically bitcoins, whether it's happening internal to a Fedimint or internal to your Fedimint or your Cashmint or your self-custodial wallet. Mm-hmm. But when you're sending value between us, you'll use the actual internet and that will be, the high-speed internet will be Lightning. The low-speed, but for higher values, will be the actual base chain itself.
Okay.
And so that's like sending it through a tanker, using a tanker to send large amounts of value, versus if I want to send just one message, I would use the Lightning network optimized for different purposes.
Okay.
So the internet works that way. The world works that way. Value, when you scale it to billions of people, will work that way as well, where it groups into different chunks, mm-hmm. and they gain a number of properties: privacy properties, functionality properties, cost properties. And when they need to transfer larger amounts or for longer distance, they will then use these more long distance transfer mechanisms like the Lightning network or the base layer.
Okay, super interesting. I was going to ask you one more question on scaling, but do you think we've talked you to death? Shall I actually move on to Portugal? What do you think?
Yeah. Let me check
your
I just want to, because I just
of course, I think we've definitely gone over an hour as well. So
okay,
no, I'm going to go maximum 10 minutes more. Promise,
cool,
yeah.
Cool.
So it's just going to be. I will ask that question on scaling then. So, like, does it at all concern you, or not? Maybe that's the wrong way to frame it. The fact that not the whole world can hold a UTXO.
Mm-hmm.
What does that? How does that make you feel? What does that make you think? Like, is that just? It's fine, that was always going to be, there's always going to be people that are sovereign and people that aren't sovereign, or sovereignty doesn't look like that, or how do you approach that sort of conundrum? Is it even a conundrum?
I don't think it's a conundrum for me. I take the world as it is. I believe that different people have different things to focus on. I think that community sovereignty is a norm for most of the people in the world. If you're sharing a house, if you're living in a flat, then you're actually sharing that house, that flat, the actual building, with other people in the building. You're sharing the city you're living with other people. If you have a car and you have multiple people in a car or on a bus, This is a normal part of life to share. This is actually, community is one of the first inventions of humanity. It is it's the most human, most fundamental invention of community. It allows us to organize and create things that we wouldn't create as a single person, do things that we wouldn't be able to do as a single person or individual. And it's a very rare invention. If you look in the animal kingdom, humans, I believe bees and termites are the only things that form complex society with different roles and specializations and so on, and hierarchies, etc. Most others didn't invent this. They basically have alpha male, alpha female, and then everyone else basically, and you have the omega, who's like the clown of who's the clown of the community, and that's pretty much it. If in terms of complexity of society, or they're loners.
Right.
And if you look at, say, termites, which don't have even something we would call a brain, they have a couple of nerve cells. They don't have opposable thumbs, so they don't have intelligence. So you can't say it's intelligence that allows them to do what they can do. They don't have the ability to a fine-grained control over the world. They don't have opposable thumbs and fingers and so on.
Yep.
They manipulate the world with their mouth. They literally manipulate the entire world with their mouth. And they're able to produce these structures. If you go on safari, you see these things that you think are hills. They're not. They're termite mines. And they are, some of them could be as high as a house. And what you don't realize is underground, they go as deep as they are high. And they regulate the temperature underground because their food source is not mushrooms, it's fungi. And I guess a form of fungi, but fungi. And these fungi are very sensitive to temperature. They have to have a certain amount of moisture, a certain amount of humidity, and a certain temperature, and it can't change by more than a degree or they die. It's their food source. So these termite mines act like these giant air conditioners that don't have any power. Wherever you can have very cold nights in these tropical environments, and you can have incredibly hot days. You can have torrential rain. These things can withstand the weight of a full-grown elephant on top of them. And with all of this, the temperature below stays exactly the same within a degree. We still today don't understand exactly how they're able to achieve that with no power, no energy. And these are things that don't even have a brain, don't even have opposable fingers. What they do have is the ability to form complex society. When I saw that for the first time, that was when I had a lightning bolt that community is a superpower. Community is an incredible technology. And when you add it with intelligence and the ability to find great control of the world, you create the world's most complex invention ever, which is the microchip. You have humans going to the moon and maybe soon going to Mars and beyond. And so, yes, we shouldn't be afraid of community. It literally is the thing, whether you like it or not, that allows us to have 99.999% of the things we see in the world.
Yep. Fabulous answer. That was great. Didn't know you were such a termite specialist. Amazing.
Yeah. That was a big, that one I've stuck in my mind palace, to use a way back when
termite built mind palace.
It's like, no, it's just like, wow. Okay. The question is, which one's more important? Intelligence, ability to manipulate the world, community? After I saw that, I realized definitely it's community.
Yeah. Well, okay. We've got to talk about Portugal just briefly. What do you make of the Bitcoin movement in Portugal? Also, why did you move to Portugal purely for tax, or for the lifestyle, for sun, for a bit of everything?
I originally moved to Portugal because I moved 2 weeks before Brexit.
Oh, nice.
And I wanted to still have optionality to retain EU citizenship, and see how the experiments played out. And when I analyzed the different countries I could go to, this seemed very interesting. I hadn't been to Portugal before. I went once because a very good friend of mine moved to Porto. It was like 6 months earlier than I moved, just for a day or two. I was other than then, I hadn't been to Portugal. And I was aware around the tax situation, but that wasn't, again, a big factor. So 6 months earlier, I went to check it out, and I thought, okay, let me give it a go. And I forgot about it because I was busy working in my previous company. And then I'd mentioned it to another friend of mine who was also an entrepreneur. And at the beginning of December, like 4 weeks before Brexit, he gave me a call. He goes, Obi! He's very much like, Obi! Yeah. Guess where I am? And he goes, where are you? He goes, well, you know, that one conversation we had, I went to Portugal and I'm about to get my my residency. And I was like thinking, I let life go by and forget this. We got this promise I made to myself to do this. And he just heard it once and took action. And so I just decided to drop everything. I got on a plane. I said I was going to go for a week, took some hand luggage with me. And I'd arranged to get my go to the local camera and become a resident, because back then pre Brexit, it just required you to walk into a local town hall, give them I think €50, and anyone could change their residency anywhere in the EU. And if you were an EU resident at the time of Brexit, then you had 6 months optionality to move. So I was going to at least just get it and then go back to the UK, back to Blighty, and figure out whether I decide to stay longer. So I went for a week, I got the residency, and I didn't go back to the UK with my hand luggage only, staying with a hand luggage for a whole 6 months, pretty much. And I only went back for 2 days to get. I have very good friends who helped me. Well, you know, you have these things called washing machines and stuff like that. But I only went back because I had some incredibly good friends who helped me sell all my stuff, pack up all my stuff, and sell it on Gumtree and all these different things on my behalf, and help find new tenants to take over my difficult to rent place, because it was quite a large place in the middle of town behind the Bank of England and stuff. So, but help find people for that, and then pack everything else up into two suitcases for me. So very grateful for them still to this day. And I only went back for 2 days to just take them to dinner, thank them, and then pick up the 2 bags and leave again. So when I first arrived in winter, and it was quite rainy the first day I arrived. I nearly slipped twice on the Azulerish.
Yeah.
You know? That would have been a bad start. But I found people where I was staying in Airbnbs, and people were very friendly. I went to a couple of meetups. I thought it's all right, you know. Because it was rainy and it was a bit cold and so on. But I met some people in the meetups, and then a few people. There was one guy who's again an entrepreneur. He had a small software startup. He was sort of like a Levels.io type person.
Okay.
He had the whole business himself, no employees and so on.
Indie hacker.
But it was working for him. And then he'd recently met the love of his life, and she arrived, and then they decided to check out Madeira. And so this is me now in the country for 3 weeks, for 2 or 3 weeks. And they went to Madeira, and like 2 days later, it was like, Obi, you need to come to Madeira. And there was a lot of people escaping from COVID lockdowns there at the time. There was this sort of nomad community, and it was supposed to be a really nice vibe there. And the weather was better as well. And I went, okay, I came here for the weather anyway. It was a little bit rainy at the time. So I booked a flight that night, and I think 1 or 2 days later, I went off to Madeira.
So you moved to Lisbon on an impulse. You moved to Madeira on an impulse as well.
And I was going to stay again for was going to stay for a week or two. I ended up spending like 6 months in Madeira for 5-6 months. It was amazing. It was a really good way of just exposing myself to the Madeiran mindset. It was a really good experience for me. It really helped me shed my previous life and mind and start this new life and mind. I was very close to moving to Madeira. Many people did. It was a magical time. We had incredible stories. Most of them I can't say, but being in polite company. But eventually I started realizing that I needed to come back to. I decided between Lisbon and Madeira, and I liked Lisbon a lot as well.
Yeah.
But Lisbon was more practical because I knew I needed to do a lot of travel.
Okay.
But if I didn't need to do so much travel, I would have probably chosen Madeira. But I like both. And so I came back to Madeira. And I came back to Lisbon, and I moved to Lisbon, and I've been here ever since, except for traveling. But in terms of the Bitcoin community, I became aware of the Bitcoin community. I did a talk while I was there in Madeira on Bitcoin, and I became aware of a lot of the Bitcoin community there. Here in Lisbon, there was a Bitcoin community, and then it changed into more of a crypto community. There was a place called The Block, which was initially a Bitcoin place, founded by a Bitcoiner as well.
It was Kevin, wasn't it?
Yeah, who then moved to the islands. And now, then it came to a point though where you're literally, for being a Bitcoiner, were almost excluded. You were like kicked out. Just like, how dare you darken our door by being a Bitcoiner? So I think that led to people like John Carvalho setting up a new sort of Bitcoin maxi type meetup, because the block became, it's always quite interesting. I think Bitcoins are toxic and so on, but actually the level of passive aggression when you went to
it
the
was
block,
high.
but it was super high. But it doesn't count because it's coming from crypto people. So obviously people are not aware of their own aggression. It's always other people's. This is the world, His story is his story, so it's made by the people who are in the majority. So yeah, it was a very, very uncomfortable environment. So it naturally led to the birth of these other Bitcoin communities, because Bitcoin is anti-fragile. It gains strength from being attacked. That's others want you not to attack. Please don't attack us. But that actually makes you more fragile. Instead, attack me. That just makes me stronger. It's like the Hulk. The Hulk, if you know your gay comic mythology, is actually technically the strongest creature in the Marvel universe. Hulk is from the Marvel universe, for Hulk, Iron Man. And the reason why, even then gods and so on, the reason why, because there is no limit to how strong it can become. The angrier you make it, i.e. the more you attack it, the stronger the Hulk becomes. Mm-hmm. And the Hulk at one point got so angry, with one blow, it smashed an entire planet. So there is no limit. It's the ultimate. Its power isn't strength or toughness. Its power is anti-fragility to this sort of mythical level. So Bitcoin is that. So you attack it, it just gets stronger. So
classic Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, it's classic, but it's
a classic way. In the sense that I asked you a question about Portugal, and you somehow made it about Bitcoin.
I read about Bitcoin. So but
no, it's
about
thing.
Bitcoin in Portugal.
Yeah,
no, and I guess because you asked me about Bitcoin in Portugal, and so after that, I lived here, really enjoyed it. The tax situation was obviously beneficial, but more importantly, the friendliness of the people. Found a really good board gaming community here, which I like. I like my board gaming. I found, it's just obviously the weather, the food, so many different things, safety levels. Mm-hmm. More people have discovered it over the years. Hopefully, we retain the elements that made it really, really so amazing for me, and Portugal continues to benefit from this influx of new people. Yeah. As Bitcoiners, we've done various things. We a group of us went on a expedition to Madeira a few years back, where we talked to The president of Madeira and many of the energy boards talk about Bitcoin mining and many other things. And then we talked to a number of MPs in the Portuguese government. More recently, again, another group of us talked at one of the most well-known private members clubs in Portugal.
I saw a photo. I was going to ask about that. Were you orange pilling?
We were doing a talk about Bitcoin,
Nice.
about Bitcoin energy, and
it was you, Jeff, and Julian Liniger, and Andrea Loja. And,
yeah. So
and
Andre again is the organizer of that, and the person
maybe
behind Bitcoin Atlantis, and so on. So so that's again. When I can, I go to John's meetups as well, which are
they've splintered
nice.
now.
Oh, they split.
Yeah.
No?
Now no longer hosting it near the bull ring, and I don't actually know because I've also been traveling similar to you, and I just haven't kept up with it. So it seems to be even more decentralizing, and there's still definitely a thriving community here, and there's lots of Bitcoin mates that I have in and around Lisbon. But I actually haven't been to a meetup in probably 6 months now, and since apparently there's a few more going on. But there's a Bitcoin 100K party in Porto, which Francis is organising.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. You're now getting there's a very active community further north.
Yeah,
I'm hoping to be able to go to that one.
Yeah,
so I'll be interested because Porto's another beautiful place. Really, really lovely food.
Yeah, special.
My best friend lives up there as well, so I'll see him and his family and while I'm there.
Cool.
So I think Portugal's. I in geek mode, I spend a lot of time analyzing countries and cities to live worldwide.
Yeah.
I guess I have the fortune or misfortune, depending on how you put it, because of what I do and because of our customer bases around the world. Almost everywhere in the world is feasible for me to base myself because we have customers worldwide. Maybe not Australia or New Zealand, but pretty much everywhere else, pretty much every other continent. And so I choose based on where I think will be the best for a number of very, very geeky factors. And I review this every 6 months or so. And when I do, take into account just everything, the quality of life, temperature, safety levels, internet speeds and everything, but taking all into account, Portugal still consistently keeps coming up again. And for me, because of my need for travel, Lisbon is the place for me.
Awesome, man. I think that's a lovely note to finish on. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would have liked to be asked?
My current favorite board game.
Your current favorite board? Wolverine or
Werewolf.
Sorry, Lugar. I always break it friendly. Yeah. I've gone to the DC world. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not werewolf. It's the same type. Those are called. It's called a social.
Hitler. No.
That's also. I also played that a lot, but and that would have been the case if you asked me a year ago, or maybe 6 months ago. But no, there's a new game in town for me.
Okay.
Which is called Blood on the Clock Tower.
Blood on the Clock Tower. Is it a similar thing? Community-based game?
It is a similar community.
By the way, isn't it funny that your favorite board games are community-based?
Oh yeah,
games?
I didn't really think about it, but yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
It is funny. But it's a really cool game. If you know these games like Werewolf or Mafia, Mafia, if you're an American, Mafia or Werewolf. Or Secret Hitler, and so they're social deduction games. So you have the powerful minority versus the powerless or the less powered majority.
Yeah.
And the minority have one of their superpowers is they know who they are, and they know who's not part of their group by extension, and they also tend to have the ability to slowly eliminate the majority. Majority has little or no power, and they have numbers on their side. And if they cooperate, if they form community, if they trust, they can win. If they distrust and they don't try to work together, they're guaranteed to lose.
Yeah.
And this is actually a gamification of life, you know, and if you want, we have numbers on our side, various and numerous, strength in numbers. But we do need to, we should verify, but it is, and I think I might actually have it as my keychain, because there's people who make these sort of key fobs or metal, and they stamp different messages.
Oh, yeah.
They call themselves the Bad Boating Club, and it's really cool.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And after one of my talks, she made one specifically for me. I have it on my, over here. And I have it. Is it the one? Yes, I can feel it. I won't show my keys.
Yeah.
I might give away stuff. But, and she goes, yeah.
So,
October 2022, Obi, you know, the Bad Boating Club. Yeah.
Very
and
nice.
the message is trust and verify.
Trust and verify.
So, and I think this is the final form.
Yeah.
You know, we lived in a world where for too long people trusted blindly and never verified. And that's obviously the most fragile scenario. So we went from fragility to toughness by realizing that it's much better and much tougher to not trust but verify.
Mm.
But that doesn't advance you, because trust is important. That trust is a key part of making society. You have to sort of trust that I'm in a car, that the car manufacturer did what they were supposed to do, and you know the toothpaste doesn't contain poison. And,
trust this building is
it's not going to fall on your head. You know, otherwise you literally are just going to be alone in the forest by yourself.
Yeah,
you know. So that allows you to be tough and strong, but it doesn't allow you to prosper and become anti-fragile. To be anti-fragile, you should verify. That prevents you from being other people doing harm against you. We should also trust, because that allows you to form complex society and grow. And so the final form is this: trust. I did the whole talk, and she summarized it down to, and I love this statement: trust and verify. Trust, but also verify. Trust and verify.
Yeah.
So I have this all the time with me now, because it's so simple, and
that's amazing.
That's the final point.
And it's October 22nd. That must have been the Edinburgh Bitcoin conference, no? She made it down.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Oh, good memory.
Yeah. I can say something about
That's also where I met Antonia Ruppel from Save the Children.
Yeah, of course.
And 18 months later, we finally, after a lot of discussion, signed a memorandum, and we started on a series of trials, which we're actively working with them as well. And again, that will take time to do well, to do properly, but we will not stop until it's working, and they will not stop. That was a lot of the vetting for both sides, was to make sure we're both committed to keep working until it works.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we didn't want to start, and they didn't want to start. And so that was the main commitment, and it will work, and it will be amazing because of the people we can support.
Amazing. I mean, I spoke to Antonia last week, actually, because I wanted to understand where it's at and where it's going. She said, basically, we can't report on it just yet.
We're going to
but as you say, we will win.
No. Step by step.
Okay. Wicked. Let's leave it there, Obi, as I know you've got other stuff to do today, but thank you so much. I'm going to shake your hand as well.
Thank you very much, matey.
It was a pleasure. And
nice.
For those listening, please check out Obi's work. Please check out Fedi. You can download the app. You can't start up your own federation just yet.
Yeah, you can.
You can start your own federation.
Start your own federations right now. But there are people who provide services to help you set it up now as well. Because so there's people like BTC Mentors, which is BTC Sessions, Ben's startup. They will help you set up a federation. So you can do that right now. If you're a little bit more technical, you can use things like Clover. And if you're more technical, you can go off and just follow the instructions on site and set up yourself. But we'll be rolling out more, to probably be a Fedimint, because you can add Fediments or so on, which will actually give you step-by-step instructions of the different options you have to run and set up your own federation yourself.
Great. Okay. Well, in which case, set it up. And thanks very much for watching, listening, or idly listening while you're doing the washing up. That's what I do when I'm doing my podcast. And please leave a comment, any questions you have, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Thank you.
do what you love and save in Bitcoin. Ciao.
Thank you very much.
That was Obi Nwosu in Lisbon. Please follow him and his work on Twitter. He is @Obi. And of course, the website, that is fedi.xyz, or Z if you're American. I would also like to thank my sponsor, Plan B Network, which is a wonderful resource to help you learn a bit more about Bitcoin. So please check out planb.network for any Bitcoin questions you may have. And remember, it is free. There's no "you are the product." Plan B Network is completely and utterly free. It's amazing. I would also like to thank Coin Corner, a Bitcoin exchange based out of the UK. They have been going for 10 years now. So you know they're good, because anything that lasts that long in the Bitcoin and crypto space is probably doing something right. I have been Joe Nakamoto, and if you hit subscribe, I will bring you some more Bitcoin content very, very soon. Thank you so much.